The transport ship shuddered as it docked with Kepler Station. Captain Jake Morrison gripped his seat and watched through the small window as the massive alien structure came into view. The station was bigger than any city on Earth, with towers that stretched into space and docking bays that could hold 100 human ships. "First time seeing something like this?" asked Amy Collins from the seat beside him. The young woman tried to sound calm, but Jake could hear the excitement in her voice. "Yeah," Jake said, "and probably not the last time I'll be surprised by what's out here." Behind them, Ben Parker was checking his tablet for the 100th time. The tactical expert had spent months preparing for this moment. Lisa Grant sat quietly in the back, a small case on her lap that contained her research materials. She had been chosen to represent Earth's biological sciences, though Jake wondered if the aliens would care about bugs and plants. The docking process finished with a loud clank. A voice came over the ship's speaker system, but it wasn't human. The words were translated by their computers, but the alien tone still came through. "Earth delegation, prepare for transfer to Academy Section 7. Follow the blue lights." Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. "Remember what we talked about. We're here to learn and prove that humans belong in this academy. Don't let them push you around, but don't start any fights either." The airlock opened, and they stepped into a corridor that was clearly not built for humans. The ceiling was 3 times taller than needed, and the walls curved in strange ways. Blue lights on the floor led them forward. Other beings moved through the corridor. Jake had seen pictures, but being near them was different. A group of Krillian students walked past, each one over 8 feet tall with thick gray skin that looked like armor. Their eyes glowed red, and their hands ended in claws that could tear through metal. "Look at the little ones," one of them said, in heavily accented English. "Are those the humans we heard about?" His friends laughed. Jake kept walking, but he felt his jaw tighten. They reached a large room filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Jake couldn't figure out which end was the head. A tall, thin creature that seemed to be made of crystal approached them. "I am Instructor Nalthek. You are the Earth group, yes?" "Yes, sir," Jake said. "Captain Jake Morrison, United Earth Military. Your species is very small," Nalthek said, looking down at them. "This will make combat training difficult." "We'll manage," Amy said. Nalthek led them to a section of seats that had been adjusted for human size. Around them, alien students stared and whispered. Jake caught fragments of conversation and translated text on his tablet. So weak-looking. No natural weapons. How did they even reach space? A massive Krillian student turned in his seat to face them. His skin was darker than the others, and scars covered his arms. "I am Vextar. They say I am the best warrior in this academy. What can you soft humans teach us about fighting?" Ben Parker started to stand, but Jake put a hand on his arm. "We're here to learn from each other," Jake said calmly. Vextar laughed. "Learn from you? You have no claws, no armor, no natural strength. You are prey animals that somehow built spaceships." Other students joined in the laughter. Jake felt heat rise in his face, but he kept his expression neutral. "Attention, students," came a voice over the room's speakers. "Today we will hear presentations from our newest exchange students. Each group will share something unique from their homeworld." Jake's heart sank. They hadn't expected to present on their first day. Amy squeezed his shoulder. "We've got this," she whispered. One by one, alien students presented amazing things from their worlds. The Zephyrians showed crystals that could store massive amounts of energy. The Velkari demonstrated their natural ability to phase through solid matter. Each presentation brought sounds of approval from the other students. Finally, it was their turn. Lisa stood up, clutching her case. "I want to show you something from Earth," she said, her voice shaking slightly. She opened the case and pulled out a small glass container. Inside was a common house spider no bigger than a human fingernail. The room fell silent for a moment. Then the laughter started. "That's it?" Vextar boomed. "That tiny thing? It's so small I can barely see it," called out a Zephyrian student named Zephyra. "One of our younglings could step on 1,000 of those." "What does it do?" asked another voice. "Does it shoot lasers? Breathe fire?" Lisa's face turned red, but she kept talking. This is an orb weaver spider. It can create webs 20 times, stronger than steel. It can sense vibrations from incredible distances. It can survive in almost any environment. The laughter grew louder. Steel? What is steel compared to Krillian armor? Vextar stood up, his massive frame casting a shadow over Lisa. Your world's greatest predator could not even hurt my smallest claw. It's not about size, Lisa said, but her voice was drowned out by the noise. Enough, Instructor Nalthek said. Miss Grant, please continue. Lisa looked around the room at the mocking faces. The spider uses intelligence and strategy instead of brute force. It studies its environment, plans its attacks, and works with incredible precision. How boring, Zephyra said. Where we come from, we hunt void beasts the size of your buildings, real predators that could swallow your spider and not even notice. Lisa sat down, her presentation clearly over. Jake wanted to say something, but he knew it would only make things worse. As they left the presentation room, alien students continued to whisper and laugh. Jake heard fragments. Pathetic. How embarrassing. They brought a bug to impress us. Don't listen to them, Jake told his team as they walked to their assigned quarters. They're right, though, Lisa said quietly. Compared to what they showed, a spider seems pretty useless. No, Amy said firmly. You know what you're talking about, they just don't understand yet. That night, Jake lay in his narrow bunk and stared at the ceiling. Through the wall, he could hear Krillian students still laughing about the tiny earth bug. He thought about the months of preparation, the hope that humans could prove themselves worthy of joining the galactic community. Maybe they had made a mistake. Maybe humans really didn't belong here among beings who could tear apart metal with their bare hands or manipulate energy like it was clay. But then he remembered something his old drill sergeant used to say. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Jake just hoped his team was ready for them. Amy Collins couldn't sleep. The laughter from yesterday's presentation still rang in her ears. She got up from her bunk and walked to the small window in their quarters. Outside, the stars looked the same as they did from Earth, but everything else felt alien and hostile. Can't sleep either. Ben Parker's voice came from the darkness. No, Amy said. I keep thinking about what happened today. Lisa's presentation wasn't that bad, Ben said, though he didn't sound convinced. It wasn't the presentation. It was how they looked at us, like we're some kind of joke. The next morning brought new humiliation. In the cafeteria, alien students pointed and whispered as the humans walked past. Vexitar made loud comments about the bug lovers every time they came near. Even the instructors seemed to doubt whether humans belonged at the academy. During combat theory class, Instructor Nalthek asked students to discuss their species' natural advantages in warfare. The Krillians talked about their armor and claws. The Zephyrians demonstrated their energy manipulation by making small lights dance in the air. The Velkari showed how they could phase through solid objects. When it was Amy's turn, she stood up slowly. Humans don't have natural weapons or armor. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're good at working together and solving problems. Working together? Vextar scoffed. Many species work together. That is not special. And what problems? Can you solve that we cannot? Asked Zephyra. You could not even solve the problem of making your spider presentation interesting. More laughter filled the room. Amy felt her face burn with anger and embarrassment. After class, she cornered Jake in the corridor. I want to challenge them, she said. Challenge them to what? Jake asked. Combat exercises, survival training, whatever they think they're so good at. Jake shook his head. Amy, that's not smart. These beings have natural advantages we can't match. A Krillian could break you in half without trying. So we just let them walk all over us? Let them think Earth doesn't belong here? I don't know, Jake admitted, but getting into fights won't help. Lisa appeared around the corner looking miserable. I heard what you were talking about. If anyone should challenge them, it should be me. My presentation started all this. No, Amy said firmly. This isn't about your spider. This is about them thinking we're weak. That afternoon, Amy made her decision. She walked into the main study hall where dozens of alien students were gathered. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to speak loudly. I want to make a formal challenge under Academy combat protocols. The room went quiet. Vextar looked up from his tablet with amusement. What kind of challenge, little human? Survival exercises. Each species demonstrates their abilities in real combat scenarios. Winner gets premier status in the advanced combat programs. Vextar stood up, his massive frame towering over her. You want to compete against us in combat? Not direct combat, Amy said quickly. Survival scenarios. Teams get dropped into hostile environments and have to complete objectives while staying alive. The alien students looked at each other with growing excitement. This was clearly the kind of challenge they understood. This is foolish, said a Velkari student. Humans will not survive the first environment. Then you have nothing to worry about, Amy shot back. Zephyra floated closer, her crystalline form reflecting the room's lights. What makes you think you can succeed where naturally superior beings thrive? Maybe we'll surprise you. Vextars. Laughter boomed through the room. I accept this challenge. It will be entertaining to watch humans fail so completely. Word spread quickly through the academy. By evening, half the student body knew about the challenge. Jake found Amy in their quarters, looking both determined and terrified. What have you done, Yurdi? He asked. What I had to do. We can't just sit here and take their insults. Amy, these beings evolved to survive in conditions that would kill us instantly. They have natural weapons and abilities we can't match. I know, but we have other advantages. Lisa looked up from her research tablet. What advantages? My spiders were a joke to them. Amy sat down across from her. Your spiders weren't a joke. They just don't understand what makes them special yet. Spiders are small and weak compared to their species, Lisa said sadly. So, are we? But that doesn't mean we're helpless. Ben had been quiet during the conversation, but now he spoke up. The challenge could work, if we approach it right. Jake raised an eyebrow. How? They're thinking like warriors. Direct confrontation, using natural abilities to overpower problems. But survival isn't always about being the biggest or strongest. What are you thinking? Amy asked. Strategy, planning, using tools and intelligence instead of relying on natural weapons. Lisa suddenly looked up from her tablet. Could I bring research specimens to the challenge? Jake frowned. What kind of specimens? My spiders. Different species, adapted for different environments. I've been studying how they survive in extreme conditions. Lisa, they already laughed at your spiders once. Why would you want to go through that again? Lisa's eyes had a new determination in them. Because I know something they don't. These creatures aren't just tiny bugs. They're perfect survival machines that have been evolving for millions of years. Amy felt a spark of hope. What do you mean? Spiders can survive in deserts, Arctic conditions, tropical jungles, even underwater for extended periods. They're incredibly adaptable, and they work together in ways most people don't understand. Ben leaned forward with interest. Work together how? Some species share information through web vibrations. Others coordinate hunting strategies across large areas. They're like a living sensor network. Jake was still skeptical. Even if that's true, how does it help us in a survival challenge? Lisa smiled for the first time since the failed presentation. Because while they're busy being big and strong and obvious, spiders gather information. They know everything that's happening in their environment. You want to use spiders as reconnaissance, Ben said, understanding dawning on his face. More than that, I want to use them as partners. Amy stood up, feeling excitement build in her chest. Jake, we have to try this. It's our only chance to prove that humans belong here. Jake looked at each of them, 3 young people who had come so far from Earth, who had worked so hard to be here, and who were now facing the possibility of complete failure and humiliation. The alien species have natural advantages we can't match, he said slowly. But Maybe that's not the point. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Maybe the point is to show them what humans can do that they can't. Working with other species instead of dominating them. Using intelligence and cooperation instead of brute force. Amy nodded eagerly. So, we accept the challenge? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Through their window, he could see alien students moving through the station corridors, beings with incredible natural powers who saw humans as weak and pathetic. We accept, he said finally. But we do this smart. We study every environment they might put us in. We plan for every possible scenario. And Lisa, you bring every spider, species you think might help. Lisa's face lit up. Really? You think this could work? I think, Jake said, that we're about to teach these aliens something they never expected to learn from humans. That night, word reached the instructors about the challenge. Nalthek reviewed the formal request with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Humans challenging experienced alien warriors in survival scenarios seemed like a recipe for disaster, but the challenge had been made according to proper protocols and all parties had agreed. The first exercise would begin in 3 days. In their quarters, the human team began planning in earnest. Ben studied tactical manuals and environmental data. Amy researched the strengths and weaknesses of each alien species they would face. Lisa carefully selected spider specimens that could handle different conditions. Are you sure about this? Jake asked her as she prepared her specimen containers. Lisa looked at the small creatures in their cases. To anyone else, they might seem insignificant. But she saw something different. She saw millions of years of evolution producing perfect survivors. I'm sure, she said. It's time to show them what Earth's creatures can really do. The transport ship carrying the students to the first survival environment felt like a flying tomb. Nobody spoke much during the 2-hour journey. The alien students sat in groups, discussing strategy in their native languages. The humans huddled, together, going over their plans one final time. Lisa clutched her specimen case tightly. Inside were 6 different species of spiders, each chosen for specific environmental advantages. She had spent 3 sleepless nights researching and preparing, but now doubt crept into her mind. What if she was wrong? What if the spiders couldn't do what she thought they could? First environment is designated as Jungle World Alpha, announced the transport pilot. Dense vegetation, high humidity, multiple apex predators, limited visibility. Survival time, 72 hours. Objective: reach the beacon on the northern plateau and activate it. Through the small windows, the students could see their destination. A green world covered in thick forest, with mountains rising through layers of cloud. Steam rose from the jungle canopy, suggesting intense heat and moisture below. Remember, Amy whispered to her team, we're not trying to be the strongest or fastest. We're trying to be the smartest. The transport touched down in a clearing barely large enough for the ship. The moment the doors opened, humid air rushed in like a wall. The jungle was alive with sounds, howls, screeches, and rustling that suggested large predators moving through the underbrush. Teams will be dropped at different locations, announced Instructor Nalthek through the communication system. Your survival gear is limited to basic tools and whatever natural abilities your species possesses. Begin when ready. The Krillian team, led by Vextar, immediately charged into the jungle with confidence. Their thick armor-like skin deflected thorns and branches as they pushed through the vegetation. They moved in a straight line toward the northern plateau, using their natural strength to overcome obstacles. The Zephyrian team took a different approach. Zephyra and her companions used their energy manipulation abilities to clear paths through the dense growth. They could communicate across long distances using light signals, coordinating their movement through the jungle. Other alien species showed their own advantages. The Velkari phased through solid obstacles like fallen trees and rock formations. The Aquarian team used their enhanced senses to detect water sources and safe paths. Each group moved with the confidence that came from natural superiority. The human team stood at the edge of their assigned starting point, looking small and vulnerable compared to the others. Jake checked their basic survival gear, water purification, Tablets, emergency food, basic tools, and Lisa's specimen case. All right, Amy said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Let's show them what humans can do. They had barely entered the jungle when the first challenge appeared. A massive creature crashed through the undergrowth nearby, making the ground shake. It looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a tank, with thick armor plating and tusks that could pierce steel. The alien teams would have either fought the creature directly or used their natural abilities to escape. The humans did something different. They froze, becoming perfectly still, and waited. The creature sniffed the air, its small eyes scanning for threats. After a tense minute, it moved on, crashing away through the forest. Smart, Ben whispered. Sometimes the best strategy is not to fight at all. Lisa was already opening her specimen case. Time to start phase 1, she said. She carefully released the first species, jumping spiders adapted for tropical environments. These tiny creatures were nearly invisible in the jungle light, but Lisa knew they would immediately begin exploring their surroundings. What are they going to do? Jake asked, watching the barely visible spiders disappear into the vegetation. Set up a network, Lisa explained. These species naturally spread out to cover territory. They'll start building webs and mapping the area around us. While they waited for the spiders to establish themselves, Ben studied their route options. The direct path to the northern plateau was the most obvious choice, but it was also the most dangerous. Heavy undergrowth, steep terrain, and likely the most predators. There, he said, pointing to what looked like a longer route that curved to the east. The terrain is more gradual and it follows what might be a water source. Amy nodded. Longer but safer, and if the others are taking the direct route, we won't run into them. After 30 minutes, Lisa felt a vibration on a thin thread she had attached to her wrist. The spiders are ready, she said. They've found something interesting. Following nearly invisible silk threads, the team moved through the jungle with surprising efficiency. The spiders had identified the safest paths, marked dangerous areas, and even found sources of fresh water. What would have been random stumbling through hostile territory became a guided tour. This is incredible, Jake muttered as they avoided a pit filled with something that hissed angrily at their approach. How do they know where these dangers are? Web vibrations, Lisa explained. Spiders can detect movement and weight distribution through their webs. They know when something big and dangerous is moving around. Meanwhile, the alien teams were having more direct encounters with the jungle's inhabitants. The Krillians fought their way through several predator attacks, their natural armor protecting them, but slowing their progress. The Zephyrians used energy blasts to drive off threats, but the noise attracted more dangerous creatures to their location. The human team moved quietly through paths the spiders had scouted, avoiding confrontation entirely. They made steady progress toward the plateau while the other teams dealt with increasingly aggressive wildlife. Contact from the spiders, Lisa announced, feeling vibrations through her monitoring thread. There's something big ahead. Multiple creatures, moving in a coordinated pattern. Ben studied the terrain ahead. Pack hunters, probably waiting for teams to come through this area. Can we go around? Amy asked. That would add hours to our route. The other teams will reach the plateau before us. Jake considered their options. What do the spiders suggest? Lisa was quiet for a moment, interpreting the signals coming through the web network. They're mapping the pack's movement pattern. The creatures patrol in a specific route with gaps in their coverage. Timing, Ben realized. We wait for the right moment and move through when they're in the wrong position. It took an hour of patient waiting, but the spiders eventually signaled an opportunity. The team moved quickly but quietly through a section of jungle that the pack had just finished patrolling. They reached the other side without encountering a single predator. As night fell, the human team made camp in a location the spiders had identified as safe. A small grove where the trees formed a natural barrier, and the web network could provide early warning of any approaching threats. Other teams were not so fortunate. Communication intercepts revealed that the Krillians were fighting off constant attacks, their direct approach having attracted every predator in their path. The Zephyrians had used so much energy clearing their route that they needed to rest and recharge. We're actually ahead of schedule, Amy realized as she checked their progress on the map. The spiders are incredible, Jake admitted. I never would have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself. Lisa smiled as she checked on her tiny partners. They're just doing what they evolved to do, surviving by being smart instead of strong. The next morning brought new challenges. The terrain became steeper as they approached the plateau, and the predators grew larger and more aggressive. But the spider network had grown too, spreading throughout the area they had traveled and creating an information system no alien team could match. Big movement ahead, Lisa announced. Something really large, but it's not moving like a predator. They crept forward carefully and found the source of the disturbance. One of the alien teams, the Aquarians, was trapped in a clearing, surrounded by creatures that looked like giant lizards with too many teeth. Amy's tactical instincts kicked in. We can't just leave them. We're supposed to be competing against them, Ben pointed out. We're supposed to be proving what humans are capable of, Amy replied. This is our chance. Jake nodded slowly. What do you have in mind? Amy was already studying the situation. Lisa, can your spiders create a distraction? Something to draw the predators away from the Aquarians? Lisa consulted her web network. The spiders have mapped the entire area. They know where these creatures rest, where they hunt, where they avoid. We could use that. What followed was the most complex operation any of them had ever attempted. Using information from the spider network, Ben identified the creatures' behavioral patterns. Amy developed a strategy to exploit those patterns. Lisa coordinated with her spiders to create a series of disturbances that would lead the predators away from the trapped Aquarians. It worked perfectly. The giant lizards, responding to carefully orchestrated signals from the spider network, moved off to investigate what they thought were easier prey opportunities. The Aquarians escaped without even knowing how their rescue had been accomplished. Did we just save an alien team using spiders? Jake asked in disbelief. Yes, Lisa said proudly, and we're still on schedule to reach the beacon first. But the real test was yet to come. As they climbed toward the northern plateau, a message came through their communication system. It was Vextar, and he sounded frustrated. Human. The second environment was nothing like the jungle. Ice and snow stretched in every direction, with wind so cold it cut through their protective gear like knives. The human team stood at their starting position, watching their breath turn to frost in the thin air. Arctic World Beta, came the announcement. Sub-zero temperatures, limited resources, predators adapted to extreme cold. Objective: locate and secure the thermal generator at the center coordinates. Time limit: 48 hours. Lisa opened her specimen case with numb fingers. This time she released cold-adapted jumping spiders and a species of wolf spider that could survive freezing temperatures. The tiny creatures seemed impossibly fragile in the harsh environment, but Lisa knew better. Will they even survive out there? Ben asked, watching the barely visible spiders disappear into the snow. These species can actually freeze solid and then come back to life when they warm up, Lisa explained. They're more cold-resistant than we are. The Krillian team was already moving across the ice with their usual direct approach. Their thick skin provided some protection against the cold, but even they seemed affected by the extreme conditions. The Zephyrians were struggling more, their energy manipulation abilities weakened by the cold environment. The human team took a different route, guided by their preparation and Ben's tactical analysis. Instead of crossing the open ice fields where wind and predators posed the greatest threats, they moved along rocky outcroppings that provided shelter. Within an hour, Lisa's spider network was sending back information about the frozen wasteland around them. The spiders had found caves that provided shelter, identified areas where the ice was thin and dangerous, and even located thermal vents that could provide warmth. Amazing, Jake muttered as they avoided a section of ice that looked solid but was actually covering a deep crevasse. The spiders found that? They can sense vibrations and structural weaknesses, Lisa said. To them, unstable ice probably feels wrong in their web patterns. But the real test came when they encountered the Arctic predators, massive creatures that looked like white bears with too many claws and teeth that glowed blue with cold. The alien teams were fighting them directly, using their natural weapons and abilities. The human team did something different. Using information from the spider network, they discovered that these predators followed specific hunting routes and avoided certain areas where the ice was unstable. Instead of fighting, they used this knowledge to stay out of the creature's path entirely. It's like having eyes everywhere, Amy said as they navigated safely around a sleeping predator the size of a truck. The spiders are showing us things we never could have found on our own. They were making good progress when they received a distress signal. It was weak and distorted, but clearly alien in origin. Ben triangulated the source to a location about 2 miles from their current position. It's not our problem, he pointed out. We're supposed to be competing against them. Amy was already checking the spider network for the safest route to the signal source. It is our problem. Someone's in trouble. They found Vextar alone, trapped in a crevasse that had opened up beneath him. The massive Krillian warrior was wedged between walls of ice, too injured to climb out. His team was nowhere to be seen. "Human," he called out when he saw them approaching. "You came to watch me die?" "We came to help," Amy said, though she wasn't sure how they could possibly lift someone Vextar's size. "Help?" Vextar's laugh was bitter. "I am 3 times your weight and twice your height. You cannot lift me from this place." "Maybe not directly," Ben said, studying the situation. "But we might have other options." Lisa was already consulting her spider network. The tiny creatures had mapped the entire area around the crevasse, including structural weaknesses and stable anchor points. More importantly, they had found something else. "There's a network of caves connected to this crevasse," she announced, "and something moving through them." Jake peered down at Vextar. "Is your team looking for you?" "My team left me behind. Krillians do not carry the weak." "Well, humans do," Amy said firmly. "Lisa, what are the spiders showing you?" Lisa was receiving more information through the web network. "There's a way out, but it's not obvious. The crevasse connects to a cave system that leads back to the surface about a 1/4 mile from here." "I cannot fit through caves," Vextar protested. "These caves are larger than normal," Lisa said. "Carved by thermal vents. But you'll need guidance to navigate them safely." What happened next surprised everyone, including Vextar himself. Lisa carefully lowered one of her cold-adapted spiders down into the crevasse. The tiny creature, barely visible, in the ice and shadows began to weave a web. "What is it doing?" Vextar asked. "Making you a map," Lisa replied. The spider's web wasn't random. It was a carefully constructed pattern that showed the safe path through the cave system, places where the ice was stable, where the thermal vents provided warmth, where the passages were wide enough for a Krillian to pass through. Vextar stared at the delicate web pattern for a long moment. "This tiny creature, it knows the way out?" "It knows the safe way out," Lisa corrected. "Follow the web pattern, and you'll reach the surface exit." "But how do I see it in the dark caves?" Lisa smiled and pulled out a small device from her pack. "Ultraviolet light. Spiderwebs glow under UV. The web will light up like a roadmap." As Vextar began his journey through the caves, following the glowing web pattern that would lead him to safety, he found himself thinking about what had just happened. The humans had come to help him when his own team had abandoned him. More incredibly, they had used the tiny creature he had mocked to save his life. The spider that now guided him through the darkness was smaller than his smallest claw. He could crush it without thinking. But instead it was leading him home. Meanwhile, the human team continued toward their objective. The spider network had grown to cover dozens of square miles, providing them with information about weather patterns, predator movements, and safe routes through the dangerous terrain. "We're actually going to win this," Ben realized as they approached the thermal generator's location. "The spiders are giving us advantages none of the other teams can match." "It's not about winning," Amy said. "It's about proving that cooperation works better than domination." They reached the thermal generator ahead of all other teams, despite taking time to rescue Vextar. The spider network had made their navigation so efficient that helping others hadn't slowed them down at all. But the biggest surprise came when they were preparing to return to the pickup point. Vextar appeared, having successfully navigated the cave system using the spider's web map. "Human," he called out as he approached their camp. Jake tensed, unsure what the massive warrior intended. Vextar stopped a few feet away and did something none of them expected. He knelt down in the snow, bringing his huge frame closer to their level. "The small spider saved my life," he said quietly. "I do not understand how, but it led me through dangers I could not have survived alone." The spider was just doing what spiders do, Lisa said, using intelligence and cooperation to solve problems. "Like humans do," Vextar said, and there was no mockery in his voice now. "I was wrong about your species. Strength is not only in claws and armor." "Thank you," Amy said. Vextar stood up slowly. "When we return to the academy, I will tell my team what happened here. They will not believe it, but I will tell them anyway." The third environment was a volcanic world with rivers of lava and toxic gases. The fourth was an ocean world where they had to survive on floating islands while avoiding sea monsters. In each environment, the spider network proved invaluable, providing information and guidance that no other team could match. By the time they reached the fifth and final environment, word had spread among the alien students. The humans weren't winning through superior strength or natural abilities. They were succeeding through intelligence, cooperation, and their partnership with creatures that most beings considered insignificant. "They're calling you the spider. Team now," Jake told Lisa as they prepared for the final challenge. Lisa looked at her specimen case now containing dozens of different species that had proven their worth in various environments. "I can live with that," she said. The final environment was the most complex yet. A massive space station that had been damaged and was slowly breaking apart. Teams had to navigate through sections with failing life support, avoid debris, and reach the central core to restart the station's systems. This time, all the alien teams knew to watch what the humans were doing. They had seen enough to understand that the tiny Earth creatures were more valuable than they looked, but they still didn't understand how valuable until the space station's artificial gravity failed and they found themselves floating in zero-G conditions. The alien teams adapted for planetary environments struggled with the weightless conditions. The spiders, however, were perfectly adapted for moving in 3 dimensions. They created web networks that allowed the human team to navigate through the station like they were moving through a 3-dimensional map. More importantly, the spiders found something the station sensors had missed, a critical failure in the life support system that would have killed everyone. The journey back to Kepler Station felt different from their original arrival. The transport ship carried the same students, but the atmosphere had changed completely. Where there had once been mockery and dismissal, there was now quiet respect and curiosity. Amy sat near a window, watching the stars pass by. Across the aisle, Vextar was deep in conversation with Ben about human military tactics. The massive Krillian warrior who had once called humans prey animals was now asking detailed questions about strategy and cooperation. "I still do not understand how such small creatures can be so valuable," Zephyra said to Lisa. The crystalline being floated beside the human xenobiologist, studying the specimen case with new interest. "It's not about size," Lisa explained patiently. "It's about what they can do. Each spider species has evolved for millions of years to survive in specific conditions. They've become perfect at what they do. But they have no weapons, no natural armor like us Krillians," said another alien student. "They have something better," Lisa said. "Information. A spider knows everything that happens in its web. When something moves, when the environment changes, when danger approaches. They turn that information into survival." Jake watched the conversations happening around him with satisfaction. 3 months ago, none of these alien beings would have given humans a second thought. Now they were asking questions, trying to understand what they had witnessed during the survival challenges. The transport docked with Kepler Station, and the students filed out into the familiar corridors. But instead of separating into species groups like before, many of the aliens stayed close to the human team, continuing their conversations. "Tell me again how the spiders detected the life support failure," requested an Aquarian student. Our sensors found nothing until it was almost too late. Spiders are incredibly sensitive to changes in their environment, Lisa explained. Air pressure, humidity, chemical traces. They notice things long before mechanical sensors do. They reached the main assembly hall where Instructor Naltek was waiting with other Academy officials. The tall, crystalline being looked at the returning students with an expression that might have been surprise. I have received reports about the survival exercises, Naltek announced. The results were unexpected. Murmurs filled the hall. The alien students looked at each other, remembering what they had witnessed. The human team completed all 5 environments successfully, Naltek continued. But more significantly, they provided assistance to other teams on multiple occasions, preventing casualties and mission failures. Vextar stepped forward. Instructor, I request permission to make a formal statement. Naltek nodded. The massive Krillian looked around the room, then focused on the human team. 3 months ago, I mocked these beings for their small size and lack of natural weapons. I laughed at their presentation about tiny Earth creatures. The hall was completely silent now. I was wrong, Vextar continued, his deep voice carrying to every corner of the room. During the second survival exercise, I became separated from my team and trapped in a crevasse on the ice world. My own species left me to die, following our traditional belief that the weak must be abandoned. Several Krillian students shifted uncomfortably. The humans found me. They had no obligation to help. We were competing against each other. But they came anyway, and they saved my life using the same tiny spider I had mocked. Vextar reached into a pouch and pulled out something small. It was a preservation container, and inside was a single spider web, perfectly preserved. This web guided me through caves I could never have navigated alone. This web, created by a creature smaller than my smallest claw, led me to safety when my own strength and natural weapons were useless. He held the container up for everyone to see. I have learned something that my species needs to understand. Strength is not just about size or natural weapons. These humans work with creatures we consider insignificant, and together they achieve things none of us accomplished alone. The hall erupted in discussion. Students who had participated in the exercises shared their own stories. The Aquarian, who had been rescued from the jungle predators. The Zephyrian team that had been guided to safety through the volcanic world. The Velkari students who had learned to use spider silk to navigate the damaged space station. Instructor Nalthek raised a hand for silence. These reports suggest that Earth's delegation has demonstrated capabilities that were not anticipated when they joined our academy. Amy stepped forward. With respect, sir, we didn't demonstrate anything that wasn't already known. We just approached problems differently. How so? Most species here rely on their natural advantages: strength, energy manipulation, natural weapons. But humans evolved differently. We learned to work with other species, to use tools and intelligence, instead of relying on our bodies alone. And the spiders? Lisa spoke up. The spiders represent something important about Earth's approach to survival. We don't dominate our environment. We work with it. We don't see other species as inferior. We see them as potential partners. Zephyra floated forward. During the exercises, I observed something unusual. The human team never attempted to prove their superiority over other species. Instead, they sought to understand how each species could contribute to overall success. That's the point, Ben said. In human military doctrine, the goal isn't to be the strongest individual fighter. It's to create a force that's stronger than the sum of its parts. Instructor Nalthek considered this. You are suggesting that cooperation is more valuable than individual superiority? Not more valuable, Amy corrected. Different. Individual strength has its place, but so does cooperation. The best results come from combining different approaches. Over the following days, something remarkable happened at the academy. Alien students began approaching the human team with requests for joint training exercises. Krillian warriors wanted to learn human tactical planning. Zephyrian energy manipulators were curious about tool use and environmental adaptation. Aquarian sensory specialists asked to study spider behavior. Lisa found herself giving presentations to packed auditoriums, explaining Earth's biodiversity and the remarkable survival strategies different species had evolved. The same spiders that had been laughed at 3 months earlier were now studied with fascination and respect. "It's not just about the spiders, is it?" Vextar asked during one of their conversation sessions. "It's about how humans see the universe." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "Krillians see other beings as either threats to be defeated or weaklings to be ignored, but humans see potential partners. You looked at a tiny spider and saw not weakness, but capability." "Every species has something valuable to offer," Lisa said. "The key is figuring out what that is and how to work together." Captain Jake Morrison watched these developments with growing pride. His students had accomplished something he hadn't expected when they first arrived at the academy. They hadn't just proven that humans belonged among the galactic species. They had shown those species a new way of thinking about cooperation and strength. "Sir?" Amy found him looking out an observation deck window at the stars beyond the station. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Jake said. "When we first arrived, I wasn't sure humans had anything to contribute to this galactic community. And now I think we have something they need. Not better weapons or superior natural abilities, but a different perspective. The ability to see value in every species, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant." Amy joined him at the window. "The spiders taught us all something important." "What's that?" "That intelligence and cooperation can be just as powerful as claws and natural armor. Maybe more powerful because they bring different species together, instead of keeping them apart." A small movement caught Jake's eye. On Amy's shoulder, barely visible, sat one of Lisa's research spiders. The tiny creature was so small he could have missed it entirely, but there it was. A living reminder of the lessons they had all learned. "You know what the best part is?" Amy said, noticing his gaze. "What?" 3 months ago, Vextar would have crushed that spider without thinking about it. Now he stops to watch them work, trying to understand how something so small can be so effective. Jake smiled. "And what has he learned?" That size doesn't determine worth. That every creature, no matter how small, has evolved solutions to problems that others might not even recognize. That cooperation creates possibilities that individual strength can't achieve. A soft chime indicated that the academy's evening meal period was beginning. Around the station, students from dozens of different worlds were gathering to eat together, sharing stories and learning from each other in ways that would have been impossible just months before. As they walked toward the dining halls, Jake reflected on the change. Alien students who had once sat in separate species groups now mixed freely, discussing joint projects and shared learning experiences. The spider that had once been a source of mockery was now recognized as a symbol of the intelligence and adaptability that could be found in the most unexpected places. "Captain?" Lisa approached them, carrying her ever-present specimen case. "What is it, Lisa?" "I just wanted to thank you for believing in the spiders when no one else did, for letting me bring them on the survival exercises when it seemed crazy." Jake looked at the case that contained creatures who had revolutionized,